How are you all doing today? Welcome, welcome. All right. Just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Justine Sanborn. I am an instructor at Noble Desktop. And today we are going to be talking about social media. All right. So, we're going to talk specifically about how to make an engaging and lasting impact on social media. So, some really exciting, fun stuff to be going through, and hopefully some insightful information that can help you build your brands online, specifically through social media, in a way that, again, is engaging and lasting for your audience. Because sometimes it's easier said than done to get yourself started. So hopefully this gives you some insight of where to get yourself started and some things to consider when you plan on building your brand on social media. So let's get ourselves started here. The first thing that we're going to start with is a quote from one of the most notable creators on YouTube, which is the platform that you are watching this on right now, Jenna Marbles. Jenna Marbles is a YouTube content creator who has been creating content on YouTube for over 10 years. She's on what I would like to call a sabbatical right now. But what she said is really impactful in terms of what to think when you are thinking about social media. The big thing is what she said is the single greatest gift you could ever give the world is to be exactly who you are. All right. So who are you? Who are you? Who is your brand? That's really what I want you to think about when you're watching this presentation today. So with that idea of who are you, this is actually just a quick screenshot of the Apple Instagram. All right. So this is from a couple of months back. So their new campaign is a little different, but this particular campaign was really impactful, specifically because it incorporated everyday individuals that are simply using their iPhone to shoot really powerful, engaging photography. And they were resharing that content from those users. So that resharing process started with a hashtag shot on an iPhone, which you could still absolutely use. But again, the campaign is done now. They have moved on to other things. But what they did is they simply reshared photos that were using the hashtag shot on an iPhone and shared them to their page. And it was a really powerful, highly trafficked campaign. And this is a business, right? So something to consider with companies or yourself when you're on social media is to be as personable as possible. And what better way to be personable with your content than sharing the people that are using your devices and sharing their stories. So I think that was a really amazing campaign that Apple did. Moving on. Now, what we're going to be talking about today, we have about, around like hour to hour, 15 minutes, whatever, to be talking about the 4 fundamentals of social media. So these are the things that I suggest considering ideally before you get yourself started. But even if you have started your social media presence, that's totally fine. You can take these fundamental concepts and apply them to what you're doing right now and hopefully improve where you're at. So one of those fundamental elements is determining the right platform for your goals. Not every platform is going to work for what you're doing, right? So you want to make sure that that platform is going to be the most advantageous choice for the content that you intend on sharing on the socials. Number 2 is develop a successful social media strategy. So although viral content exists, but to be honest, very rarely at this point in social media is it something that was completely a one-off, super random, unexpected. A lot of times there is, even if say that there wasn't a strategy. There wasn't oftentimes an unintentional strategy. A lot of folks are making the right choices on social media, and sometimes they don't even realize what they're doing right off the bat. And that's what's getting them those views and that engagement that you're ultimately looking for. So you do absolutely want a social media strategy, and having a little bit more of an idea of what you're doing, in my opinion, I think can be helpful. Number 3 is create content that increases engagement and drives sales. So really considering how you're going to be talking to your community, how you're going to engage them in the content that they're interested in, and how to get them talking, sharing, liking, all that fun stuff, right? Speaking of, if you're watching this current live, feel free to type in the chat, say, hey, I'm super pumped. Well, you don't have to say that. I'm super pumped, clearly, but just type in the chat, hey, hi, whatever you would like to type, just to see that you're here. It's great to see all of you in this awesome presentation. So I'm glad you're here. Anyway, the last and 4th fundamental element of social media is gaining, of course, a following and expanding your reach, right? So the last 2 are definitely hand in hand with how they work, but we'll get into that later on. All right. So nice little, image of all of the things that you could be using on the socials. We got the YouTubes, we got the Instagrams, we got the Snaps, whatever we're looking for. But we're going to dive right into determining the right social media platform for you. Okay. It could be a wide variety of different things that might work for you. And it's oftentimes not just one social media platform, but multiple. Okay. The big things that you really want to think about when you're thinking about which platforms to start using or which platforms to focus on, you want to make sure that the social media platform that you're choosing will allow you to showcase your strengths. Okay. For example, if you are a writer, let's say specifically a comedic writer. Now, a lot of you might be thinking right off the top of your head, oh, this is probably something that would work the best on Twitter. And you're absolutely right. Now, that person could also go to other platforms as well and be really successful. Okay. Now, Twitter is kind of the almost, if you will, obvious route that comedic writer would take. However, they could also consider making a TikTok account and making videos of the written content and making a video version of that and sharing that on that platform as well. Hi, Jaren. Number 2 is reach your target audience. Okay. Who is your target audience? How are you reaching them? Okay. The next thing is, and last thing is, cross-post to other platforms. So what are those other platforms that you're cross-posting to? Just as I mentioned before, you could start off on the Twitter and head over to the TikTok after, if it makes the most sense for the content that you're sharing. So let's just dive a bit deeper into these concepts. Showcasing your strength. This is a big one because you really have to nail down, all right, who are you and what do you do best? Okay. Who are you? What do you do best? Okay. What unique knowledge, talent, or resources do you have? Is there somebody that you know that might help you with your storytelling? What sort of resources? Maybe you have an adorable pet. That's a resource. That's amazing. That's great. What advantages do you have? Okay. So in terms of advantages, what advantages do you have in comparison to other people that might have an adorable pet or that might have that person that might help them make the social media content? What advantages do you have? What do other people say that you do well? Oh, Gabriella, thank you. And I'm glad that you're excited to be joining tonight. I'm glad to hear it. So this is a big one. Really spend some time asking people what they think of when they think of you, right? So if the idea of you comes to mind, what are things that they think of? Those are some really great keys to what you can use to showcase your strengths. Okay. So those are some really insightful pieces that you, of course, couldn't answer yourself, and asking other people what they think of you is a little unnerving at first, but I highly recommend. It's really interesting to get to know people better by understanding what they think of you better. What resources do you have available? Again, similar to the advantages, what resources do you have available that will enable you to create content consistently and successfully and of quality? Okay, so that's something that you want to think about. We are going to be diving into that later as well. And lastly, what is my greatest achievement? All right, so make a list of all those achievements that you've had in your life. And that can also lead you to understanding what that strength is that you would like to showcase. Okay, might be multiple achievements. A lot of times, what a lot of folks will do with their strengths is they'll connect them. Okay, maybe they don't have just one strength, maybe they have two. Okay, maybe their strength is sharing stories and makeup. Okay, and then they will put those two together and share their stories. They'll do storytelling while doing makeup. Okay, Bailey Sarin does that, actually. Amazing content. I believe I'm saying her last name wrong, but definitely look her up. She's also on YouTube. Okay, next step. So once you have your strength nailed down, you're like, all right, this is what I'm doing. I'm the comedic writer. I'm running with it. That is my jam. I know this is what people think of me. These are my achievements, etc. You have all those other things ready to go. Now it's time to figure out, all right, who is this content for? Okay. So use existing information that you have. Think about your friends. Think about your family. Think about who they are as people. Okay. Now, if you're a business, think about the people that are already going to your business. Who are those people that are frequently shopping at your business? Who are the people that you would like to shop at your business? That type of existing data you want to definitely start with. Okay. Additionally, what I would suggest doing is doing a little bit of social listening. Okay. That can be done both on social media and also in real life as well. So let's say, for example, your company was created chips, potato chips. Okay, so you had a potato chip company. You were thinking about starting a social media presence, and you were trying to really decide, okay, what exactly is the target audience? What are they about? Okay, well, you could go to a grocery store where those chips are being sold, and you could ask people, what they thought of the chips, or why are they choosing the chips? What makes those chips special to them? Okay. You can you could go onto social media to see what they are talking about in terms of those chips online. Okay. Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they a bit of both? What are the things that are starting conversations? Okay. What are they talking about? Okay. Now, again, if you're doing something as an individual, it's a little different. And then again, I would suggest going into like the friendships and the family and all that fun stuff. But again, with the business, you already have that established audience to an extent. Take that and go to the next level and definitely do some social listening. Absolutely, most definitely research the competition. Even if you are an individual person, you want to research the competition. Okay. There's a lot of great ideas out there. And ultimately, if a great idea is already done really well, then then it might not be that advantageous to try that yourself. Okay. But there are other ideas where maybe someone isn't really doing it, and maybe somebody is, who knows, but maybe you can take it the next level. Maybe there's that added resource that you have that can make it more interesting and more compelling. Okay. What kind of content does your audience want? That's a big one. And that one's a little tricky to research, but it's definitely advantageous to try to get that information. If you are familiar with research, This is an instance where using qualitative research, where you are having individual interviews with people, would be the most advantageous to really get a solid insight of what they are as people, what interests them, what their hobbies are, etc. And then that can give you a bit more insight of what they want to see. Okay. These are into some like very psychographic type of research content. But if you want to have confidence in what you're posting and that it will do well, that's a really advantageous, positive step. Okay. Is really understanding what kind of content your audience wants. Okay. So, for example, me personally, my personal social media page for the last 3 years has been roller skating. And I was thinking maybe of transitioning the page over to something else because I wasn't skating as much. And so I tried, and the traffic just wasn't there. Okay, the traffic just wasn't there. And then I went out skating and I posted, hey, I haven't skated in a long time, going to the skate park, and posted just a simple selfie of just, having fun at the skate park. And the engagement that I had for just that one photo was a clear sign that what my audience wants is skating. And that's totally fine. That's what my audience wants. So that's what they're going to get. They don't want the other things that I was experimenting with or trying to use because it's just not what they want to see, and that's okay. All right. Make sure that you're creating content that your audience wants and that they will engage. Cross-posting, big deal. You want to focus on ideally more than one platform, but also don't overwhelm yourself too much. So cross-posting is really fantastic because there's a lot of platforms that do allow you to take something that you post and immediately share it to something else. So Instagram and Facebook, since they're both under the blanket house brand of Meta, those are two brands that are very easily shared across one another. Okay. There are other platforms that share really well as well. Of course, you have your Twitter and sharing that content. Instagram and Twitter work really well. So where you could take your Instagram content, share it to Twitter, and vice versa, all of those things. So ultimately, what I would suggest is what platform you feel most comfortable posting to first. See what other platforms that particular platform can cross-post to. Okay, so whatever that comfortable platform is. So my comfortable platform is Instagram. And Instagram can cross-post very efficiently to Facebook, and it can cross-post very efficiently to Twitter. So it would make the most sense to use those three. However, for the content that I'm producing, it would also be advantageous to use something like TikTok, where the cross-posting is a little different is all I'm gonna say. It's done frequently, and I'm sure that most of you have seen videos that were initially posted on TikTok and then reshared on Instagram. The most obvious indication of that is that you have that TikTok watermark that you'll see. So it is very common. It's just it's not as efficient as, again, that connection of Facebook and Twitter to Instagram. Another thing that I really strongly suggest considering is, again, in terms of researching things that are similar and reflective to what you plan on posting, but also even, again, if you are an individual, or maybe you plan on posting about your pets, that's great, that's fine. But maybe find some brands that are doing things like that too. So the NHL is a really interesting social media platform to look at because what they focus on are the players, and not just the players, the hockey players playing hockey, which is what a lot of these sport platforms tend to do. They take it a step further and they showcase a lot of the family life and the family that is incorporated with hockey. And that I think is a really interesting sports approach that I don't see that often with other sport brands that I think works really, really well for them. So definitely check them out, even if you don't like hockey. It's a good social media presence. Moving on. Now, speaking of good, with good, we have contrasting bad. And hey, bad social media, it happens. It happens. But here's a nice quote here. Wisdom is knowing the right path to take. Integrity is taking it. Okay? Yeah, I'm just going to dive into an example. So we have Chase. Chase is a bank. Chase did not make the best decision. We'll just preface with that. All right. What they posted, and this is a while back, and it is forever embedded in social media as well as just the internet as well. You Google Chase, this is probably going to come up, which not good for brand vision. Okay. But here's what they posted. They posted, why is my why is my balance so low? Bank account, make coffee at home. Bank account, eat the food that's already in the fridge. Bank account, you don't need a cab. It's only 3 blocks. I guess we'll never know. Bank account, seriously? # Monday motivation. So sometimes things are not funny, especially when they are from places that should be promoting financial freedom. And that is something that you have to really be aware of, is what is that voice that you're sharing? And that voice that Chase was attempting to share was something that was witty, and frankly, it was not witty, and it was not their place to share this story because it's not endearing. It would be a different scenario for sure if it was from a different account. But especially making the bank account being the positive voice in this conversation is not advantageous. Monday motivation was a hashtag that was intended to get people motivated, not tear them down. Okay. And ultimately this little conversation blip, again, that was attempted to be witty, was not a positive insight and was, very, challenging for their audience. And it went completely against the grain of the hashtag itself. So as you see, Chase came back with our Monday motivation is to get better at # Monday motivation tweets. Thanks for the feedback, Twitter world. Which their way of responding, I think, was great. Okay. If you are a brand and listen, if you're a person on social media, you might experience this as well. But a brand, especially, what I see so frequently is that they make a mistake. Okay. And not a good mistake, a bad mistake. You made a bad mistake, Chase. You did. Okay. A big mistake that I see is a lot of these companies will make those mistakes and it will be radio silence. Nothing will be said. Sorry, I have a little dust. Nothing will be said. Okay, it'll just be radio silence. And that will just keep that fire burning. Okay, that fire will continue burning on social media. That is so. You have to assess what was done and be honest. Say, I made a mistake. And being genuine about that honesty. Okay. The genuine interactions is what social media is ultimately about. Okay. And especially now, the audience is a lot more intelligent than you could ever imagine. So there's no hiding behind closed doors here. You have to be 100% yourself, 100% authentic self. Okay. And if you make a mistake, companies are ran by humans, and human beings make mistakes. Own up to them, understand what your faults are, call them out, call them as it is, and, continue. Again, like I said, I think Chase dealt with this situation very well. I think that they could have been a little bit more connected with their audience, because again, I think they were trying a little bit too hard still to be witty. And at this point in time, I think it's important and advantageous to be a bit more serious about the situation. So you do want to understand that balance as well. Just like any other conversation that you would have with a person in person. It's very similar to that type of exchange and environment. Okay. Next step is that you want to develop a successful social media strategy. So, successful social media strategy starts with determining your brand's voice. Again, who are you? Determine your brand's mission. What are you? And research trends and brand analytics. Why are you? Which doesn't make any sense, but I think you understand the point. So, determining your brand voice. Some questions to ask yourself when you're trying to get this figured out. Number one is, what are 3 words that represent your brand? Okay. Maybe it's, let's circle back to the comedic writer. Okay. So, comedic writer, witty, laid back, I don't want to use unique, but we'll just use unique. So witty, laid back, unique. Okay. Those are 3 fundamental words of that comedic writer's brand. And that particular comedic writer would then want to stick by consistently being witty, unique. And I already forgot the 3rd word, but, if it goes away from that and maybe they try to do like an everyday type person or personify that at some point in their social media presence, I don't think it would work very well for them. So you want to stick to those 3 words and continue with them. Okay. Which is why the next part is, what are the do's and don'ts of those words? Okay. What do those words mean? What don't they mean? What should you not do? Okay. And how can you apply those words in social media? And again, those can be applied by allowing those words to embed your persona. Okay. That persona. Yeah. Sarcastic. Perfect. Thank you, Jared. So that persona is created by those 3 words that represent your brand. Okay. There's a lot of different brands that have very clear personas on social media. So a really great place to look for those personifications of brands is both on Twitter and TikTok comments, which I know, yeah, but TikTok comments and Twitter, those interactions between brands tends to be personifications of those brands. Okay. A lot of your bigger brands are not only going to have this personification, but they're going to have a very clear understanding of what this personality is of their brand. And so you can do that with yourself. Of course, you yourself have a personality, or your pet has a personality, or whatever you plan on sharing on social media as a personality. I think it's a little harder for people to grasp at perhaps with brands, but a really great example of this is actually Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood's brand personification is the cool aunt. Okay. So yeah, just take a look at their brand presence and think about the idea of what you think a cool aunt is, and see if that is being implied in their visuals and the way that they communicate online, all that fun stuff, because it's highly likely it does. Okay, a lot of brands are like that. The personification of Burger King, for example, is a bit more like the gesture, right? A bit more comedic, witty, things like that. Okay, so each of those brands are like that. And I think I actually have a Burger King example next, if I remember correctly. Oh, not yet. Okay. Brand's mission. Okay, so what are your brand competitors' missions? Again, research your competitors as many as you possibly can, maybe even some that aren't quite like a direct competitor. Research the competitor, see what they're doing really well, see what they're doing so, see what they're doing not so well in, and get an understanding of how you can position yourself within that information. It's actually quite literally called market positioning, where you want to position yourself at a certain ranking in someone's mind. Okay. So when it comes to a brand, think about where those competitors are in that ranking. Are they first? Are they second, third? And think about where you are in a consumer's mind. Okay. Again, this is a great instance where some qualitative research might be advantageous. Interviewing somebody and being like, hey, if you thought of toilet paper, what's the first toilet paper brand that comes to mind? And maybe they'll say Charmin. And you're like, that's not our brand. Our brand's Scott's or whatever. Okay. So that would give you a stronger insight of what they're thinking. And but a lot of the competitor research you can do online very easily. Again, start with their social media presence. Try to find where, again, they're engaging with their audience. So really read those comments where they're talking to their audience and their community one-on-one as well, because that gives you a really, again, strong insight to what they are, and who they are. And again, who you can be that is needed in that space. Okay. What are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals? Okay. So let's say you just started a YouTube, and you have 10 followers. Saying, okay, my short-term goal is to get to 1,000 followers on YouTube. Oh my goodness. That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay. So 1,000 followers for a YouTube channel can take months. It can possibly take years. Okay. So something like that, where you're going from, again, just 10 followers up to 1,000, that I would consider for that particular account a long-term goal. Now that might be different for somebody who has a larger, more established audience base. Okay. Those numbers come in a lot faster in those instances. But again, for someone that's starting out, you want to think a little bit shorter term. So again, something that might not take as much time. So short-term goals should be things that you should be able to accomplish in a week. So when you're starting out on a platform, I think something that would be advantageous is just to get yourself into a posting schedule. Okay. That's also something that we're going to be talking about, but maybe that first short-term goal is getting yourself into a schedule. Maybe your short-term goal is getting 2 comments on something. Again, when you're first starting out, I think starting off small and then going from there is going to be advantageous for those short-term goals. And I think that's where a lot of folks go wrong, is that they think that perhaps those larger goals can be done in a short period of time, but they are a lot of times a bit more challenging to obtain. And again, I think for short-term goals, I think it is also advantageous to consider thinking about things that are in your control. Okay. Comments, likes, shares, all that stuff. That's not in your control. That's in your audience's control. It's in your community's control. So think about things that are in fact in your control for your short-term goals as well. Long-term goal can be pretty much whatever you want. All right. Research trends and analytics. What's trending on your chosen platform? What's trending in your industry? What keywords is your target audience searching for? And what content is your target audience engaging with? We've talked about some of these, but I haven't necessarily talked about ways of doing this research. When it comes to doing this research on social media, that information is literally at your fingertips. And one of the biggest places that I recommend going to is hashtags and understanding how to research hashtags. Okay. So on Instagram, for example, you can go to, let's say, hashtag skate all day, and you can click on that hashtag and it will show you the top posts of that hashtag. And then it will show you the most recent posts of that hashtag. It'll tell you how many people have used that hashtag, etc. And you could quite literally deep dive into that real quick, because maybe you find a post that you really like that use that hashtag, and then you look at that post and then you see what hashtags they're using. And then maybe that leads you into another direction and another direction. So a really great place to do some research when it comes to what's trending, especially in your industry. In terms of trending on your chosen platform, there's a wide variety of places to go. And honestly, it just depends on what social media platform you're using. So if you are using Google, spoiler, but if you are using YouTube, for example, you can go to Google Trends to see what's trending there. Those same Google Trends can oftentimes be reflected into Instagram, and sort of the Twitter space and sort of TikTok. But yeah, kind of for all the other ones. Like, there's still trends, but Google Trends works best with YouTube. Okay. And then for trending hashtags and content on Twitter, just go directly to Twitter, because that stuff Twitter, I would say, even faster than TikTok, trends are changing. Trends change hourly on Twitter. Okay, so again, it is more advantageous to go directly to the source in that circumstance. Okay, similar with like Instagram, where you can go directly to the source again and research things that are trending directly on Instagram, and the same with TikTok. The difference is that TikTok, you can also research trending things by trending sounds. So that's one of the things that makes that particular platform unique. Okay. What content is your target audience engaging with? That can be in a lot of cases pretty doable. Okay, so and it might seem a little how do I say this, a little weird to like deep dive into these things so much, but the content is available for you, and once you have that information, you can make more insightful and thoughtful decisions on what you're doing. So look at who else your target audience is following. Let's say you're a furniture company. Are they following any other furniture brands? What are those furniture brands? Or what other things are they into? Maybe they also follow different places that have vintage wares and things. And maybe that's something that your audience might be into. Again, those things can be searched on different profiles and seeing what people and also your competitors. Who are your competitors following? And all that information is right, again, at your fingertips. Okay. In terms of keywords with your target audience and what they're searching for, honestly, in that particular instance, I would suggest potentially looking into some like third-party outlets for different additional research information. But if you've noticed an underlying theme of the information I'm sharing with you, research is going to be one of the more advantageous things to be doing when it comes to your social media reach. Okay. The more you know, the better you can really hone in on what you're trying to showcase. There is some really wonderful third-party platforms out there for that research. Just take a look online for them. I'm not really going to be naming any here. Okay, so it was, sorry, I thought it was McDonald's and Burger King. It was actually McDonald's and Wendy's. So this is actually circling back to what I was talking about with the brand voice, okay? So we were talking about the brand voice and what that brand voice could be. And here's some brand voices for you, okay? So we have the left and the right, all right? So first we have McDonald's. Okay, so they post today. We've announced that by mid 2018, all quarter pounder burgers at the majority of our restaurants will be cooked with fresh beef. Wendy's says at McDonald's, so you'll still use frozen beef in most of your burgers in all of your restaurants, asking for a friend. Very witty, very, funny, all that fun stuff. McDonald's is trying. Then McDonald's goes Black Friday with a little asterisk, needs copy and link. And Wendy's, this is one of the best replies ever. Wendy's goes, when the tweets are as broken as the ice cream machines. Which, side note, fun fact, in case you were wondering why those ice cream machines are broken all the time, is because they're actually produced by an outsourced company, not McDonald's. And it is that company that owns the rights to fix those ice cream machines. So none of the employees have ever learned how to fix those machines because they can't learn how to fix those machines because that company won't let them. So there you go. Fun fact. That's why the ice cream machines are broken all the time. Anyway, ultimately here, as you can see, Wendy's has a very clear, witty, smart way of coming back at McDonald's, and this personality is really shining through. Whereas McDonald's, at least in 2017, I'm pretty sure their social media has gotten at least a little bit better. But yeah, I would say social media is definitely not like McDonald's strength as a brand, but they do a lot of other things really well, but maybe not one of them is here, right? And they definitely were struggling in 2017. So, but you know, that was 5 years ago. Now, social medias aren't about websites. They're about experiences. Okay, so that's really something that I want you to consider going into the next step of after you've understand what your brand voice is, your brand mission. What is this experience that your audience is going to have? Okay, so I'm going to be giving you some examples of Burger King. Now, honestly, Burger King overall does a really amazing job with their brand on social media. The reason why I use this example is specifically about engagement, okay, and the content and whether or not it's engaging, okay. It's not that this is terrible, don't get me wrong. And visually speaking, they're very consistent. Like they have a very solid color palette on Instagram, what have you. But the copy isn't really singing. It's very flat. It's like it says it's all about the chicken. And then their actual caption is all the other chicken sandwiches. Wish they were the chicken. Make a meal out of it. Get a free Whopper. You buy chicken. So like people were pumped about like the deal, but it wasn't really that interesting. Okay. And actually, Nikki here said, y'all replace the best thing on the menu. Bring back the other one, please. It was the only joy I had left in my life. So, I mean, if this was truly an engaging post, you wouldn't see that type of engagement where a person is talking about something completely, well, not completely irrelevant, but sort of off the topic, if you will, from what the post is about. Okay. If it was truly engaging and truly impactful emotionally, then the comments would have been a bit more reflective of that impact. Okay. So a couple of things that you really want to consider is number one, more storytelling, less static information. So you don't want to do the sale or the 50% off or the whatever that's happening, especially for brands. Okay. It's really flat, nothing interesting. All you're doing is trying to sell something to somebody. Okay. Try to avoid that with as much as possible. Okay. You can use a story to get somebody to go to your sale. And honestly, that's going to be a lot more engaging. Okay. Especially if you're doing like a paid advertisement as well, because they have literal buttons that either say buy now or learn more or whatever you need. You don't need your copy to also say that same thing. Okay. You want your copy to tell a story, and you want your images to tell a story. Okay. Think about the stories that your family and friends have told you and what you find interesting and compelling and engaging. Okay. Huge thing that I've spoke about before is you really want to be consistent, excuse me. We'll talk about that in more detail shortly, and in quality content. Okay. Storytelling versus static. What do I mean? Okay. Basic sales tactics, what are words, are boring and not empathetic. Okay. Which ultimately summarize what I said before. Okay. You want to make your stories personable. You want to make your stories captivating. Okay. And you want to make your stories reach your audiences emotionally. You really want to make them want to come back for more. Okay. You want them to really be emotionally engaged. Okay. Again, think about, maybe rewind a little bit and think about when you were a tiny human and people were sharing stories with you at those times. What were some stories that really stuck with you? Okay. My grandfather shared a lot of hilarious stories about growing up in rural Minnesota and back forever ago. Riding horses, just so many fun stories, and all of those stories are like deeply embedded in my head. Okay? Because they were so incredibly engaging. Okay? And they were so emotionally engaging too. Laugh and cry and all these things. These are things that you really want to think about when you're telling a story online. That's what I mean about telling a story. Okay? You can tell that same story visually, just with a photo. You can tell that with just a couple words. You can tell that with video, but you really want to make it, emotionally personable. Seriously, arguably the most important thing is to be consistent. If all else fails, just post consistently. Have a schedule and post that specific amount of times per week or per day that you promised that you are going to post. If you abide to that, you will be engaging your audience and reach a wider audience. You will. Okay. Regardless of if it's fast or slow, honestly, that does depend on the content itself. But if you can abide to just being consistent in and of itself, that will definitely grow your audience. Okay. Even if the content isn't anything of what other things I've suggested before, if you are consistent, it will work in your favor. If you are not consistent, and even if you have the other elements nailed down, also not going to work in your favor. Okay? You need this. This is an essential asset of success on social media platforms. Okay? Now, with that being said, depending on what platform you choose to use, there are some things that you want to consider with that, right? Number one is how frequently should you post on your platform? So depending on your platform, that's going to change. Honestly, I do recommend experimenting a little bit with this to see what gets more engagement and what gets less engagement. For example, on Instagram, it could be anywhere from 1 to 5 times a day. And you have to just try it out and see what works best for you. But realistically, is posting 5 times a day something that everybody can do? And no, that's definitely not realistic for most. Okay. So do something that's also realistic within your schedule. So if that's 1 time a day or 3 times a week, whatever that is, if it works with your schedule, start there. Okay. If you can increase it later, great. So you can actually experiment and really see what works best, but find something ultimately that you can do and stick to it. Okay. When is your audience present? This is a really important one too. When is your audience present on your platform? So most of these platforms will give you some insight about your audience. If you have business accounts, so again, circling back to Instagram, does this very thing for you. It will literally tell you all the active times of your audience. Oddly enough, my audience, and I still think it's odd to this day because it's a very unusual time. My audience is the most active at 3 p.m. Excuse me, sorry. 3 p.m. I have no idea. I don't know. Strange. That's when they're most active. Okay. So I should ideally be posting at 3 p.m. Is that realistic for my schedule? No. Okay. So when I was posting frequently, which I'm implying that I'm not right now, but when I was, it was in the morning because that I could fit into my schedule. Okay. It was before I went to work, post in the morning, done. Okay. Worked for me. Okay. Did it work best for my audience? Nope. But it was also not my full-time job. Okay. So you have to assess what's going to work for your schedule and what you're doing, etc. Okay. Got to balance out those, those things. Also, try to respond to comments as quickly as possible. It's kind of like a text where, like, if you don't respond right away, people will forget about it. All right. So try to be as active as possible in terms of responding to comments, and responding within a good time frame. And I know this sounds really fast, but ideally you want to be within like a 15-minute mark of each comment if you really want to start engaging your audience. Now, again, this does depend on where your audience is right now. So if you already have a large audience, this doesn't necessarily pertain as much to you, but especially for the smaller growing folks, this is something that you definitely want to consider. Okay, is trying to respond to those comments at least within 15 minutes of when they were posted. Okay. But again, be realistic with yourself. Okay. Quality content. Another really important one. Okay. Again, just to reiterate, post engaging storytelling content. Yes, absolutely. But also ideally it's of high quality graphics, video, and photography. Again, there are things that you can sort of, I don't want to say get away with, but things that take precedence over this. Okay. The storytelling and the frequency do take precedence. I'm not saying that this isn't important. It is absolutely important. Of course, it wouldn't be listed if it wasn't, but do have those two solid in place, and then you can start to consider this. So, a lot of your mobile devices are able to capture high quality content. But if you are concerned that the content that you're posting isn't of higher quality, or maybe you don't have access, let's say, to a videographer or photographer to help you out all the time, that's fine. Figure out a way that you can communicate with your audience in a more organic, maybe less quality way. A great example of that, again, on Instagram, is perhaps you don't post as frequently with posts, but you're posting very actively multiple times a day in your stories. That's still engaging your audience, because they can DM you and respond directly to you with whatever you're posting in your stories, if that works well for your brand. Okay. That won't necessarily work for everyone, but that is definitely something to consider. So on average, your content that you're going to see in a story is going to be of a lesser quality than, again, in general, than what you would see on the actual feed of Instagram or on your FYP on TikTok. Okay. So those are some things another great example actually is TikTok. So the actual posts themselves, very important to post on TikTok, but once you reach your 1,000 followers on TikTok and you are able to go live, going live can be a lot lesser quality. Okay. It's a lot less about the quality there and in the live environment on TikTok. And it's a lot more about the engagement. Okay. The engagement with your audience and having them interact and, send reactions and comment and things like that. So there's that piece of it. Okay. Avoid posting static, low quality content. Again, if the low quality side of it is a little unavoidable, as I mentioned, consider those other things, like, again, the lives, as well as stories. Avoid posting static. What I mean is really dull, uninteresting stuff. This I would consider static. Okay. They tried to make this static image like slightly interesting with the caption, but this I would consider static. Okay. This I would consider storytelling. Okay. So one of my personal favorites, the emo phase. I mean, perhaps we've all had one. I most certainly did. Now the emo phase is if you look at the lettuce has like the little swoop going on, and that's what they're talking about. It's actually a series of images. I think it was like 3 or 4 images, and they were all different hairstyles. So they had the like middle part and a few other styles. So that's why the caption is working on that summer lookbook. Okay. And you have a comment that's like, this is why I love Burger King. It's a lot more engaging. It's telling a story. It's very, copy wise, it's very simple, but it doesn't have to be complex for it to be a story. Okay. Because your audience is going to make up the story for themselves, just as I did when I showed the example, right? As I mentioned, I was like the emo phase. We all had one, right? I had one. That was my story that I was sharing with you. Okay. That wasn't necessarily Burger King's story, but that was their intent with this post, is to make it relatable so people can envision their own stories with it. Okay. That can also be considered storytelling. Okay. It doesn't literally have to be an actual story of something that happened. It could give somebody a stepping stone to think of their own stories too. Okay. A lot more engaging. Okay. This Maya Angelou quote is incredible. If you don't know who she is, she's an American poet and a civil rights activist and an outstanding, amazing human being. If you grew up a similar way that I grew up, you probably saw her in Sesame Street. That's the first time that I learned about Maya Angelou. But anyway, this quote is so powerful. Really think about this when it comes to your presence on social media or life, I guess. What she said was, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Right? How you made them feel. What do they feel when they thought about you? That's a crazy question to ask somebody. But truly, you want to make people feel something. And that's why storytelling is so important on social media. Okay. And the proof is in the interactions here. Okay. We have the static image on the left-hand side with 5,000 likes, about the same amount of comments, which is kind of interesting. And which is interesting. And that's all I'm going to say right there. But we have 11.5 thousand. Well, let's just say 11,000 because I'm not saying that right. I could say 11.5K. Oh, numbers are hard. But anyway, almost over double the amount of likes from the static option. Okay. Then, of course, as we talked about before, you want to gain a following and expand your reach. In terms of this idea, it's quality over quantity. Engage your audience and post frequently and consistently. Okay. The quality over quantity component, I did talk about how you can switch those out depending on what platform you're doing. But quality, what I mean by that is quality storytelling, engaging content. Again, visual quality is slightly separate. Okay. So quality content will make your brand more trustworthy, compelling, and empathetic towards your target audience. Okay. I'm not necessarily talking about the quality of the photo or video itself that you're posting. I'm talking about the quality of emotional content that you're showcasing. Okay. And that is something that will kind of ebb and flow as you go on. Sometimes things won't necessarily have that emotional connection. It happens. It's always going to happen. But ideally you have more frequently that, again, emotionally engaging content. Okay. Again, it basically makes a brand. If you are focused on a brand, it ultimately makes them more humanistic, which then therefore makes them more trustworthy overall and compelling. Okay. So you ultimately want to really embed yourself with those like humanistic feelings as you're using social media. Okay. Engage your audience. Okay. Respond to your audience in your voice. That's huge. Okay. This is why I suggested looking at your competitors, not only looking at what they post, but how they are commenting or replying to comments as well, because that's going to give you a really strong insight of what they're doing and what their personality is. Because maybe they're posting some really witty stuff, but then you go over to the comment section, you realize that their responses are not good. Okay, that can absolutely happen. And that's something that for yourselves that you want to be consistent with. Okay, you want that voice when you're making comments as well as when you're posting content to be consistent, because that again is going to gain that trustworthiness of your brand. Okay, you want to avoid shallow, empty responses. Yes, no questions that are like very easily ended, things like that. Think of things that are a bit more engaging. Asking questions is a huge one. Okay. Oftentimes with posts, I will add in a question to get my audience engaged. Okay. What are they up to? What did they do during their holiday break? What things are they interested with when it comes to comedic writing or whatever, if we're talking about the example that we had earlier. There's a lot of different things that you could ask to get them engaged, but just simply asking questions overall is advantageous on social media. Okay. Because people, the commenters that are comfortable with commenting will likely respond to a question. Okay. Post frequently. Here's some suggestions. Okay. I think that this, again, there's a lot of room for experimentation because it depends on your audience, when they're most active, what days they're most active, etc. But overall, generally speaking, post at least weekly on YouTube or a blog. Okay. These two platforms, so the platform that we're currently doing this on right now, as well as blogs, these are long form platforms. This is long content, okay? Most of the content that you're looking at YouTube at this point in time is usually longer than 10 minutes, okay? There was a time and place where YouTube was a lot more of short content, but frankly, that was before Vine or TikTok or any of those ever existed. Once those came into play, then that shorter content on YouTube kind of disappeared along with it. So longer content takes a longer time to produce. So at least weekly. Okay. If you can do more than weekly, that's fantastic. Post at least daily on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Yep. The rough one is TikTok, because let me tell you, you have, once your account gets to a certain point, I don't know exactly what it is. I think it just needs to exist for a certain amount of time. Anyway, you can post up to 3-minute long videos now on TikTok. And let me tell you, creating a compelling, engaging story that lasts 3 minutes is much more challenging than perhaps it sounds. Okay. So, and to do that on a daily basis, that's asking a lot. That's a lot. Okay. If you want a perfect example of how to use TikTok on a daily basis, look up Noodle the dog. Okay. If you haven't seen or heard of who Noodle is this amazing, very old, I think 14-year-old pug. And Noodle just doesn't want to get up in the morning sometimes, and he goes completely limp. Okay. His owner will just gently lift him up. And if he doesn't want to do anything, he goes completely limp. And his owner started calling it bones or no bones day. Right. If you've ever heard of it's a bones day or it's a no bones day, it's from Noodle the pug. Okay, from TikTok. And the reason why Noodle became such a success, frankly, is because every single day there's Noodle. Let's see whether or not Noodle is going to have bones or no bones. And it was simple enough that the owner could be consistent about posting while having a full-time job of their own. Okay, that is incredible work. Okay, simple, compelling, all right, and consistent. It hit on all three and it went viral. Okay. Instagram, again, daily, if not more than daily, especially when it comes to stories. Stories, I would say at least 3 to 5 times a day, honestly. And people are like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, right. Social media is a lot of work. That's why you want to focus on platforms that you feel most comfortable with first and slowly branch from there. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. Okay. Be realistic. And post at least daily on Facebook as well. Okay. Post at least 3 times daily on stories and Snapchat. Yeah. Okay. Well, exactly what I said before. I've seen Snapchat work really successfully for businesses. I'm not one for, I have a Snapchat, but I don't ever use it. And frankly, it's because of the incorporation of stories in Instagram, where the necessity of that app isn't really quite there for me. Anyway, but businesses have definitely taken advantage of that app, and it does work for some folks. That's great. But if that's your platform of choice, again, make sure that you're posting at least 3 times a day to that platform. And again, if you're using Instagram or Facebook, you should be doing your stories at least 3 times a day. Okay, so we're nearing the end here. And this, I think one of the hardest things to grasp in this presentation is the concept of telling a story and what it means to tell a story. So I want to show you this commercial for Google, actually, that I think does a really great job of storytelling and getting that emotional connection. I'm going to preface with, I'm sorry in advance if it's a little too emotional. I definitely go for the advertisements that have like that really strong emotional grab. So I'm just giving you a warning right now for that. But I think it's a very beautiful story and very well done and articulated. This is a pristine example of storytelling. Okay. You can't hear that. Hold on. All right.
Mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue à la toilette pour un bateau.
Oops, hold on. There we go. Little hand clap for Google. Great. Listen, I didn't even show you the even more emotional one. If you want the more emotional Google commercial, YouTube Loretta Google commercial. Get your tissues ready. It's why I don't show it in this presentation, because it is, it's intense. And the reason why I show it, and not something from, let's say, like Dude Perfect, which they're great, they're amazing. If you don't follow Dude Perfect, probably should. But the reason why is I want to showcase that brands can have a personality and have emotion too. Okay. It is not exclusive to a person being themselves on social media. It's not exclusive to your pet on social media or whatever else that is a bit more humanistic. It is open to brands and companies, and you can have that emotional value as well. Okay. And so hopefully that makes a little bit more sense from this presentation. Okay. So just a quick summary of what we covered today is a lot of stuff to think about. Okay. We started with determining the right social media platform for your goals. We talked about showcasing your strengths, reaching your target audience, and cross-posting to other platforms. Then we dived into developing a successful social media strategy by determining your brand's vision, your brand's voice, we talked about, and your brand's mission. And of course, doing a lot of research, both qualitative and quantitative research. What are words? Sometimes it's hard for me, but all of those things are, and most of those things are accessible through these social media platforms. Remember that social listening, okay? You're definitely going to want to be doing that to get more information and understanding of ultimately what people want. Okay. Create content that increases engagement and drives sales. More storytelling, less static. Again, just exactly what I just showed. You know, could Google have gone the static approach? Sure, they could have, but I wouldn't be showing that commercial to you. They created an emotional story and shared that through a commercial, and that makes it have that emotional connection. And that's something that, in my opinion, I think is much more challenging as a brand than it is as an individual or person. Okay. Or pet or whatever. Be consistent. Okay. Big time. Be consistent with what you are posting online. All right. If you can stick to a consistent schedule, you will gain a larger community, a larger audience. Okay. Be consistent and keep and be persistent and consistent. Okay. Quality of content as well. Do consider that. If the quality isn't going to be quite there, then consider different places that don't need the quality as much. Again, your live or your stories. Okay. Gain a following and expand your reach. Remember, again, quality over quantity. Again, as long as you're abiding to your schedule. So make sure you're doing that. And again, it doesn't necessarily apply to being live or stories. I know, very confusing, but anyway, engage your audience. And lastly, post frequently and again, consistently. Be persistent and consistent. Okay. So before we end things here, I've got these links for y'all that I definitely want you all to check out. Okay. So I am very slowly typing them into the chat so you all have them. Please hold as I do that for you all. This is also a really great opportunity if you do have any questions to feel free to ask them now as I slowly but surely type this out. Almost done. Okay, there we go. There's the link. All right. And one more link for y'all. No questions in the chat. Okay. Well, hopefully that just means that what I showed you made sense. But if you do have any additional questions or want to learn more about the classes that we offer at Noble Desktop, definitely check out those 2 links that I posted in the chat so that you can learn more about who we are and how we can help you achieve your social media goals. So we have both the social media marketing certificate and social media marketing classes. So if there is a particular platform that you want to focus on, you can go to one individual class, or you could do the whole social media marketing certificate as well. Totally up to you, but that would absolutely be the next step in this road to social media success. Okay. So I hope all of you had a delightful time during the presentation this evening. Again, feel free to follow us if you aren't already on YouTube. Make sure that you check out those links provided in the chat. And I think, Terry, great questions. How I feel about promotional services. Well, I think that having a company that helps get your company started, that know what they are doing, can absolutely be advantageous. So that's my thought on that. To increase followers, I think if you are trying to increase followers organically through a company that is a trustworthy and notable company that is able to create the content for you, yes. Paying for followers, paying for those likes, no. It's not organic, it's not real, and it's not going to help your business. And they do absolutely exist. Okay. So, oh, the first link is misspelled? Oh no. It took so long to type out. Okay, let me try to do it again. Actually, you know what? Hold on. I don't have to type it out. I can just copy it this time. Please hold. Escape. for Pete's. I will get this to you right now. Okay. Here we go. There it is, spelled correctly. At least I think it's correct. That's what it was. So it should be correct. But anyway, again, if any of you have any additional questions, for sure. Oh, it was the T that I missed. Okay, thank you. Thank you. For sure, check out those links that I provided in the chat. The second link is now below. Sorry about that. The first one's misspelled. So make sure you click on the one that's below that. Definitely check them out and use those as an opportunity for you to, again, grow your social media presence. So I hope everyone had a great time. And until next time,